Now you're all welcome to the Racing Room powered by AK Bet. It's me, Ronan Groom, back into the hot seat this week with the usual suspects, Tony Calvin, Harry Stewart Moore, and back from Malaga Madness. It's Anthony Kaminskis, of course. I'm anticipating we might see you on one of those YouTube videos of airport crash outs in years to come, AK. But you can tell us all how did it go down? You had a bit of madness in the airport coming back home.
Yeah, Lingus, who have gone like with Irish things. As soon as UK people get involved, it all tends to go wrong. Apart from bookmaking, of course. But Lingus, since they were bought by British Airways or whoever that parent company is, has gone down a small bit. I was stuck in Malaga for a while with the three kids and the missus and my parents actually, which wasn't probably evident from my tweet. And just basically couldn't check in. Some people have reported on the tweet I sent out it happening to them from the same airport as well. Couldn't check in the day before, despite having pre-assigned seats because we paid for them with the kids. Got to the airport, find out the missus is on standby because because the bags are under my name and I've made the booking, so the missus is on standby. And useless woman at the gate at the check-in desk couldn't do anything. Go to the gate. So we get to the gate and it's like, yeah, there's no seat. The flight's oversold, which I knew they did, but I didn't think they'd do it to a family as such. And my dad has actually then volunteered to stay behind and then fly to Manchester from Malaga later that night if he can, which was a bit of a nightmare. But and then just it was a whole heap of stuff. Basically, we board the plane. They tell my dad the plane's full. This little Spanish woman, probably the most incompetent person I've ever come across in my life, I'd say, told us the plane was full. And we get on the plane, and the very nice lady from Aer Lingus, as we're boarding, says, "I hope you had a great day." To which, like, red rag to a bull, to me was like, "No, we haven't had a great day. Actually, see my dad there. He hasn't been able to board the plane. We had a seat. We paid for them. Blah blah blah." And and then it turns out we've got kids at the front of the plane. There's kids dotted around the front of the plane. Apparently, kids have to be in row one or something on this particular flight. Malaga Airport didn't know it. There's a whole, we get on late, so everyone's looking at you. Then everyone had to rearrange the whole cabin for our kids, essentially. Absolute nightmare. And then it transpires. The woman from Aer Lingus says, "There's actually a seat empty on the flight. Is your dad still around?" It's like, for fuck's sake. So I ring my dad. He's walking away from the gate. Dad has to come back to the gate. He actually gets on the plane. They lost our travel cart on part of the journey. There's like a million different things. It was an absolute shit show. And then it transpires when we take off that there's two civilians in civilian clothes sat in the air stewardess's seats at the front of the plane. And someone mentions that your seat was taken by one of them, basically, and they worked for Aer Lingus. So I don't usually complain about anything, just suck it up. But
Yeah, you're known for that.
I'm incentivized to just
You don't usually
lose
complain
the
about
plot.
anything, huh?
Not that's going to take a while and get me back with very little funds, but I might follow this one through to the end. You never know.
Okay. Yeah, see what happens. Before we get into the racing review, Tony, you wanted to touch on the kind of, I guess, the big racing kind of Twitter or X kind of story or tweet that went off this week. John Berry trainers had €10 each way double when he was at the races on both of his horses at SP at Pontefract last week, and appeared to be getting knocked back. But you can give us a bit of detail on this of what's actually gone on.
Yeah, it's probably a bit of a non-story, but obviously he got a lot of social media interaction because everyone just likes to kick bookies, don't they? And the idea that any bookmaker would reject a tenner each way SP double would be, it was red rag to a bull, red rag to the Twitter bull, wasn't it? So yeah, it was John Berry obviously complained and at Pontefract, and apparently he got any number of excuses saying you can't place that bet here, etc., etc. Apparently, it sounds like a misunderstanding. If you're that, probably a generous assessment. It sounds like the Pontefract has got a betting hall, as opposed to a William Hill betting shop, and part of that is a tote area, and the other part of that is a William Hill area. But it just transpires that the tote area had a load of hill slips all over it, so he went and tried to use the hill slips to have a bet on the tote, and they said, "No, sorry, you can't do that here." There might have been some other excuses given as well, but the bottom line is John Berry went on Twitter, made a fair fuss about it. Loads of people responded, and it was quite amusing because I got I've never met him, met the guy, but I got a couple of phone calls on Friday which I ignored, and one on Saturday which I responded to, which I answered from Hills. It sounds like his bosses asked him to ring me to explain the situation, because I think the hierarchy were getting very miffed at the fact that they would reject such a bet. And they just said it was just like a total misunderstanding. They put it down to kind of like, operator error on the tote side, maybe the heel side as well. It sounds like just a very badly organized setup. But yeah, it's I just thought I just chuck it in there because, like I said, it did get quite a lot of heat on X.
If anyone wants to distinguish between the tote and bookmakers shops now, that just for clarity, this is for John more than anything. The tote is the area that's got the 126-year-old women moving at a snail's pace, and the betting shop has got the 20-year-old women painting the nails and not paying you any attention. So that's the good distinguisher. John's more than welcome to open an AK Bets account. SP near the off. Each way bets in 7 runner races, a quarter of the first 2. You're talking dirty to me, John. Open an account.
Very good. Yeah, you're always going to jump in there, AK. There's tote actually.
It didn't make sense. It didn't make sense, the bit about the him being told that they'd only take a double at the same meeting, which suggested to me that it was a Hills reply, but I don't know. Sorry, you were moving on.
Well, I think he's got sorted anyway, so all good. Tony, do you want to spin us through the racing review? I guess a bit of news here and there on both sides of the white rails.
Yeah, very, very quiet weekend. We'll probably start with the news off the track. A couple of horses, high-profile horses, retired. The 2021 Gold Cup winner Minella Indo and the dual Cheltenham winner Sir Gerhard. They were both retired. The Shergar Cup we'll come on to at the end because we've got some questions on that. But Asia won the team competition. Bowman won the top jockey. And that's about it, really. There's a few stories around that. One of which, actually, I just noticed this morning that the attendance for the day, everyone was saying it was actually rammed on the day. I'm just reading in Simon Knott and his video saying it was absolutely kind of like, packed like sardines in there. But in actual fact, the crowd numbers went down from 33,000 not so long ago to only 18,000 on Saturday. So that would be a big blow to Ascot. But there were a few issues surrounding that. Good news for Kia. So he won't be sulking this week because him and trainer Adrian Murray had a big race double on Saturday. They had Brockenera 30 winning, and Power Blue won down the falls on favourite True Love in the Phoenix Stakes. So Group 1 winner for Kia. So Adrian's safe for a while. Sunday racing, all the good racing was abroad. Good news for Oisin Murphy. He won the Prix Maurice de Geest Group 1 on Sagia. And first Group 1 winner for Billy Loughnane, who won on Rebels Romance, winning another Group 1. I think it was his 8th in total in Germany. And the other big news story, kind of like maybe away from the track, is the Sun story on Saturday, which made claims that there was a Northern Jumps Racing has been rocked by an alleged race fixing scandal. Now, Harry will probably talk us through what we can and can't say, and imagine we can't say hardly anything. But the important thing here is the story wasn't acknowledged by any of the TV outlets on Saturday, to my knowledge. It was referenced briefly on Luck on Sunday yesterday, But quite bizarrely, the Racing Post have just totally ignored the story, which seems quite bizarre when, not a lot of people have followed it up. I think the only outlet that's followed it up has been the Sunday Telegraph yesterday, and that was just a very brief, just a really kind of like a brief kind of like rehash of the Sun piece. So, given that the claims being made in the Sun article, I was perplexed why the trade paper hadn't followed it up yet. But as Harry will probably say now, there's not a great deal we can say on this other than referencing what the Sun said.
Yeah, I think that I understand that the Racing Post journalists have been aware of this for some time and have been digging, and it may be that they just got scooped while they were waiting for more information on it, because it's very bare bones. It's the sort of typical tabloid picture of a blacked out jockey on the Sun. It's a northern jockey. I think Telegraph expanded that to suggest there may be another jockey and a trainer involved. We're obviously in conspiracy betting territory. We don't know much more than that. The BHA have seized, or at least sought to seize, the jockey's electronic items, which is standard stuff nowadays. In the old days, you just took their telephone. Now it's much more complicated, trying to work out how people have communicated with one another, of course. And I think we wait to see. The BHA are in a difficult position, particularly once there is a police investigation. This is an unusual one of a police investigation in tandem with the BHA, and that is fraught with difficulties for both parties, because the police obviously have more extensive powers, but the BHA arguably have more extensive expertise in the area, and that can cause difficulties. But we wait to see what happens on this one. There are names floating around on social media, which it's not very helpful to do that for all sorts of reasons. I can tell you from recent experience that the people giving very certain rumors and telling you facts on social media are very often wrong. And you're in danger of prejudicing a criminal investigation. And so if you're putting names up on social media at the moment, you want to have a second, think twice about that, I'd suggest.
Did it surprise you that they went into, obviously there's not a great deal amount of detail they could do there. Did it surprise you that they actually said the jockeys involved haven't ridden for quite a while? It's not very helpful, because if you're an injured jockey, for example, you got a genuine injury and that's why you're out, and the BHA are said to have stopped this jockey from riding in the last few months. That is unhelpful, isn't it? Because that in itself sparks a lot of kind of like comments.
I think so. I think the story really needed something to flesh it out, because without that, really, it was just, we are aware of a jockey being investigated by the police, and so I think that was probably what caused the Sun to publish those extra details. It's nice to see that they haven't on this occasion. Well, not that it was them, but the News of the World, of course, decided to publish the name of Kieran Fallon in 2004. Got that very badly wrong and ended up having to pay him undisclosed damages. So you do have to be really careful with these rumors and stories. And if you publish names, and frankly, if you can defame people by innuendo, you don't need to name them. You just need people to realize who it is you're talking about. And so people do need to be very careful. Was it unhelpful to say a northern jockey who's suspended? I suppose it depends how many of them fit the bill. I haven't gone through that to check, but certainly people do appear to be putting two and two together, and we don't know whether the number they're making at the moment is 4, but perhaps time will tell.
Did it also surprise you that there was some police involvement at this point?
Well, I'm aware of a gambling commission investigation into into betting conspiracies in racing. I don't know any more than that there is one, and I wonder if this is another gambling commission project. It always surprises me when the authorities outside of racing get involved in it, because they've not got a good history of involvement in it, because it's such an esoteric sport. It's very difficult for them to get their heads around some of the ways that they let themselves down in the past. It would be completely embarrassing to anyone in horse racing. So, I suppose they'll say, well, we've got the BHA for that. But again, they do have to be careful. BHA are not a statutory body. You can't treat them. It's not like sort of, the FBI and the CIA. It's more like, the police and the National Tiddlywinks Association. They're not the same They're not the same. I don't mean to be unnecessarily rude.
I was waiting to see how that analogy was going to
end. But my point is simply that although racing is a big sport, it's still a private law organization governed by people's consent to do it. It's like a golf club, or as I say, the National Tiddlywinks Association. And so the police have to be careful what information they share. I think sometimes that water has been muddied by the fact that the BHA have historically employed ex-policemen. I'm going back quite some time now. But I do think sometimes they think that, sort of voce conversations can take place, whereas they really shouldn't. And so, yeah, look, we'll see on this one. It's really early days. We know very little about it.
What was that word you just used there that I've never heard before in my life? Explain
sotto voce, it just means under your breath, I think.
There we go. Every day is a school day with a racing ring.
Didn't you do a bit of digging on this, Anthony? You said leading him up the garden path.
I'm saying nothing after that.
Quite right.
I'll be getting let out in handcuffs. No, you rumor and innuendo, and yeah, there's probably no point me commenting on it at this stage. But yeah, I think I've heard some rumors. All right.
Yeah,
the rumors have been flying around.
Story.
Yeah. Sorry, Red.
Very likely the story will develop over the coming weeks and months, and we'll be able to talk about it in much more detail. Then we'll kick off with our topics, lads. 7 topics to get through today, and start with the natural kind of starting place would be the Racing 2026 fixture list, which was published during the week. So just to give you quick key talking points, I guess, that were in it was Peter Scargill's piece in the Racing Post, just summarising exactly what's come out of the main talking points of the fixture list. So 1,458 fixtures scheduled for 2026, so it's only 2 down on 2025. But the Premier Race days have come down from 162 to 52. 3.2 million invested in prize money for developmental races, to make it more attractive for horses at all levels. There's going to be a rise in minimum values for black type races. There's also going to be 200,000 added to prize money of the big flagship races, those being the July Cup, King George, Sussex Stakes, and Judemonte International. Support also for the Mayor scheme and point-to-point horses, and there's also going to be trial of earlier finishes for the floodlit races. I think they're going to try that over 2 months and have those meetings finished by 8 p.m. We had a question on Paul Smith from this, which is a nice way to lead in. Are the BHA on crack? A reduction in the fixture list of 2 for 2026 looks tone deaf to me and seems to ignore the obvious problems we have around too much racing. A reduction of 200 fixtures would have been a more positive move, but still wouldn't fix it. Who wants first innings here, lads? AK, do you want to come in and bat first here? What was your general reaction to the fixture list publish?
I think it's just probably said this too much on the spot, but I think it's just a failure, an absolute failure of the BHA to grasp or just intimate even that they need to everyone knows what the problem is. I think it's just too much crap racing. That's the biggest problem. And all these little things, I think they've probably done 0.5% of what needs to be done. The sport will decline in the next year, and the people that are making these decisions aren't even intimating that this is what they've done, but ideally they'd like to do this, but the conditions aren't there for this to happen. I'd just get rid of them all. I would get rid of them all. It's just not good enough.
To jump in there and Tony, you pointed me in this direction of the Bill Barber piece in the Race Post, just pointing out that it's probably not as simple as just what the BHA have the task at hand here. So he was writing, as much as it will pain some to hear, there are no quick fixes for the BHA when it comes to the fixture list. There will be many disappointed. The total number of meetings next year has only been reduced by 2, but the BHA has limited scope to wield the axe when racecourses own 85% of the fixtures. And with the racecourses having asked for guarantees over those rights and discussions, which finally led to Lord Allen taking over as BHA chair, it is unlikely the governing body will have a huge amount of freedom in the short term. So he did go on to say,
you might as well bury the sport then. We might, if that is the situation, we might as well just knock the sport on the head. This is only going to get worse. We can't just keep saying, can't do this, can't do that, can't do that.
Isn't the fixture list though a symptom really of the power structure in the sport rather than the other way around? So until you fix the power structure, you're not going to be able to reduce the fixture list. So does that mean this wasn't that much of a surprise?
They have to come out and just say, instead of talking about all this stuff as that this is unbelievably positive, which is overall, it's unbelievably not. They just need to come out and go, we want to do this, but we just can't under the power structure. And they actually need to come out and just say the sport will keep declining because we can't do anything about it. There needs to be an acknowledgement of that. Dressing all this up as good is crap. Like, the sport will decline in the next year again under the status quo.
It sounds like I'm very surprised that Lord Adam took the job. He starts in September on the basis that it seems like the racecourses have got status quo on the fixtures. They're not giving up any fixture lists in the short term. Their hold on the fixtures. So I'm surprised he took the job under that. It just comes down to the fact that I just cannot see the racecourses budging and voting for less racing. I just can't see them doing it with their business models. I mean, ARC seems to be outmaneuvering the BHA and everybody else at every single turn. Now, part of this fixture list is ARC have transferred all their Saturday night Wolverhampton fixture lists. I think it's to Newcastle and Southall, but they're so cute here that they're going to fill those Wolverhampton Saturday night fixtures, presumably with the Greyhound track that they built there. So it's a win-win for ARC, and they've just transferred that and then just slotted in Greyhound racing. Is when the BHA coming up against people like Crudis and ARC with a clear strategy, money-making strategy, there's just no way in the world that I can see Lord Allen or the BHA just winning these particular battles with these organisations. Now, you might say the Jockey Club racecourses might be a bit more open to actually kind of like downgrading some of their fixtures, but it's not going to be anything significant. And, you know, everyone knows that 2 fixtures in 2026 is just ludicrous. But I can't see that changing in 2027 onwards. They just say this is like a stepping stone to more significant changes in 2027, but I just cannot see it.
Is there any explanation, Tony, for the reduction in Premier Racing fixtures? That seems to have been.
It doesn't work.
Well, yeah, but I mean, they haven't got rid of it. They've just reduced it to 52.
They might actually be Premier Racers. Like they actually might be.
But if they explain the thinking, I didn't see any explanation for it. And the protected window, which drove a lot of smaller courses mad, has gone as well, apparently.
Yeah, it's just the Premier. Presumably they're just going to have one Premier fixture every Saturday, hence the 52. But
I'm all for trying new things. They seem to try a hell of a lot of things that don't work.
The one thing that really annoys me, and I've said it on here countless times, this chucking money at the top end. You know, they're giving 800 grand for 4 races alone, and I just don't get the logic. They put 4.4 million pounds worth of increased prize money, and a lot of that is going towards the better horses, the development funds, etc., which is all well and good. But I think it's maybe not unconnected to this Northern race fixing scandal, that if they're not addressing the prize money at the bottom end, and I appreciate they don't want to be giving money to the likes of ARC to prop up their businesses from getting £4 races and making them £6 races. But until you address that bottom level, it's going to drag down the whole sport, because that's where, if you're racing for £4, the integrity risks of that of
100%.
these races are gonna just like drag the sport down.
Mix that with a betting environment where there's literally no liquidity in the market. Like the sausage machine, all that does is spit out a product that nobody wants any kind of bet laid on. Someone comes to me and wants £2, £3, £4, £5 on a low grade race. We just don't want it. Absolutely no interest in it. It's crap racing.
At least
For just the riposte there, sorry, Tony. They have, like, I mean, that we did mention that in the kind of summary points. They have invested over 3 million into these developmental races, they're calling them, which seems to be horses like novices and maidens and stuff, and horses at a lower level, just to that's probably what they'd be saying if they were listening to this.
I don't think they're necessarily lower level. I think they're going to build up the top end from that novice maiden stage. They're not addressing the acres of very, very low class racing. But if you're racing, like I said, if you're racing for £4, you're going to get a lot of integrity issues coming off the back of that. If you can win more money by not losing.
Yeah, it's all the other thing that ties into it is falling field sizes. Like it's easier to bend races when there's less runners in them. Like it's every single metric I look at is like, you just don't want any bets on this stuff of any kind of size. It's just a rubbish product, absolutely rubbish.
Yeah, but do you not think that the question of where the prize money goes needs to be part of a bigger strategy as to how you're going to sell the future of the sport to people, and whether the money needs to go to the top end, because it's Saturday audiences that are going to increase and bring in more racing, or you're going to thicken out the bottom end and support that, bring it closer to the top, because you think that's what's going to bring people in. My own feeling is, I'm afraid, I think it's the former of those. I think that there is an argument for putting money more towards the top end of racing, because that's where interest is and more likely to be sustained. But that's very difficult for people who are scraping by towards the sort of financial bottom of the sport.
I've said it for a long time. If you split racing into 5 levels, I'd be putting the money into levels 2 and 3, and I'd be cutting level 5 for sure.
I just think they had Paul Johnson of the National Trainers Federation on Luck and it kind of, a lot of his members must be absolutely aghast at Ascot, for example, getting another 200 grand for the King George. Ascot can afford to fund their own races, I would imagine. They're a very rich track, and so are the other ones mentioned, the likes of Goodwood, and they've got all this Whirlpool money coming in as well. So not only are they getting that, and it's the top tracks getting that Whirlpool money, and it's also, it just seems to me fundamentally wrong if you're kind of like giving a minority of the sport the majority of the funds. I just don't see it. But personally, I don't. I get the attracting international runners, making it a real premier event, 2 million prize money for the King George next year. But if the bottom is kind of like withering, then I question that. I do question that.
That's a fair point. I just bring in our next topic in and just kind of tie it in with this, because it's kind of along the same lines, which is regards to the Shergar Cup field sizes on Saturday. So the Shergar Cup Classic didn't fill out. There was a 1.5 mile handicap which had just 8 runners. 10 was the max there. No reserves in the stayers race. All these races are worth 80,000. With the Shergar Cup mile is worth 100,000. And owners, it's probably owners don't have to pay entry fees into this race. So Nick Smith, the Ascot Director of Racing and Public Affairs, was talking about this and kind of blaming the bloated fixture list on the many options that horses have. So he just had a few stats where 41% of horses had multiple entries across the 6-race program, and 39% of those horses in the Classic had other options elsewhere. And I wonder, just going back to bring in a question from David Brown, if we just go back to kind of the Lord Allen situation coming in, so David Brown was asking us, Martin Curtis says racecourses will protect fixtures at all costs. So what's the point of Lord Island's BHA reform if ARC won't budge? Is he here to lead change or just referee a turf war that's already lost? Can't see how he can implement any change.
That's a good way of putting it. It's a really clever way.
Yeah. Harry, I wonder, just like we've had this merry-go-round with Lord Allen for months and months, and I can't see a situation. Well, maybe it's more complicated in the end, but I can't see a situation where he hasn't taken this on, thinking that he can implement some sort of change, and that's what we've been hoping for and calling for. Do you see it that way, or would you be worried by this latest kind of what's coming out here? I guess.
I don't know. I think that we just got to hold fire on this one. It's a bit like the fixture list. It's the last fixture list before he gets in, and the hope is that this is the change that the industry's been hoping for. I mean, I think he's literally started. He doesn't start for 3 weeks officially. So my view on this is that we'll know a lot more in 6 months. Well, hopefully know an awful lot more in 6 months' time. But he's done an extraordinarily difficult job because there are just so many power players and institutions involved. There are so many different interests involved in racing that it's going to be a really difficult job, and we can only hope for the best, really. But I just think it's too early to comment on what he will do or what's happened since he was appointed. It is definitely regrettable that we had an interim chair and an interim CEO for this long, and it is really difficult for when you're in an interim position to make any kind of changes. So that rather, like, again, that was another reason this fixture list was not going to be revolutionary by any stretch, is because the people in charge would feel that they are holding it for whoever it is that's going to replace them, and it's not their position to start weighing them down with their own revolutionary choices.
The alternative view to that is they could have done something quite dramatic because they were in.
But that's just not the way the world works. It's just not going to happen. No, anyone who goes in there for 6 months and decides to sort of repaint the entirety of the inside the BHA or move.
They might get a better job after it than on the board at Chester if they do something more dramatic.
Yeah, but Julie Harrington was not interim. She was there about 5 years, wasn't she? The point is, I think it's a really difficult job having a powerful role. It's a bit like football managers on an interim basis. There's not very much you can do. You're being expected just to hold the reins and hope that nothing disastrous happens. But they've been interim for too long in this instance.
Coming back to the Nick Smith's comments, I imagine he was incredibly miffed by the fact that the Racing League took place on the Thursday and the Sunday series the day after. They are 3 fixtures targeting the same type of 0 to 90, 95 type horses and below. And to have 3 initiatives outside of the mainstream within 4 days is just ludicrous. I mean, the Racing League field sizes haven't been filling. There are a lot of non-runners in the Sunday series yesterday, and they were disappointing field sizes as well. And you've got to remember, the sport has actually been adding to the fixture list. Obviously the Racing Leagues, I think it might be in his 4th or 5th year. Sunday series, 3rd or 4th year. These were new initiatives that have got levy board funding behind them in the Racing League analysis, and I think obviously Sky Bet sponsor the Sunday series. We've been actually adding to the problem in that respect. So I imagine a lot of Nick Smith's ire would have been looking at either side of those fixtures at the weekend. It's like I said, it's just madness.
Yeah, we can revisit the Shergar Cup in the questions section, lads, but we'll move on to what's our third topic now, and this is the BHA and IHRB, that being the Irish Horse Racing Regulatory Board, parting ways in regards to a betting monitoring kind of contract that had been in place. So this is a story by Connor Fenley in the Racing Post. So the BHA basically had been working with the IHRB, offering additional monitoring of betting trends since 2020. And Niall Cronin is the head of communications for IHRB, was speaking to Connor for the piece. and basically saying that the contract's come to an end and they're not going to renew it as such. So I think it's basically a case of they've decided that they're going to look for extra value for money, or they just don't think it's worth going ahead. Obviously, being a semi-state body, need to be extremely vigilant with how they spend money. That's what's the kind of line here. AK, did you see anything in this story? Does it make sense for the IHRB to move on from this, or is this just kind of a
The
kind of
first
one of
thing I'd
those
be
things?
asking is who's monitoring the betting patterns.
Yeah,
Um,
that it's conspicuously silent on who's taking over.
yeah, like is it ended now? So is it just free for all at the moment? Is it, or like I know those reports are that they provide for stewards pre races taking place are unbelievably detailed on what's occurred. I think from speaking to a couple of stewards, they find them very, very useful, given it's not their domain, essentially.
Yeah.
It paints a picture that they might not have seen, or be able to interpret just by looking at your favourite betting apps odds. So that's been removed. There's probably been some not far off open goals from a prosecution point of view that keep getting missed. So when I looked at it and I saw 350k, I thought it's probably slightly punchy, but there's probably a good couple of salaries going into that 365 days a year or 364 days a year. So what would it spec out as? It might not be as punchy as it sounds, but who's monitoring gambling markets in a sport and a country that people have perceptions of anyway? I think that's probably fair to say. Same as the UK, in fairness. Yeah, seems like an absolute free for all.
So should state in the story, probably should have mentioned this, like and it says, in the interim, the IHRB and BHA continue to cooperate and share relevant information as appropriate, and there's no impact on that. This is a quote from Niall Cronin. There's no impact on the IHRB's ability to conduct investigations during this period.
So
Statutory.
Conducting investigations is not the same thing
Yeah.
as monitoring. It didn't seem very clear, that wording, as you know, if you were concerned about who would be stepping in, and the BHA are good at this, they're good at betting monitoring. You would be worried reading that statement that they don't really have immediate cover for that gig.
I think some of the memorandums of understanding or whatever they call it have fallen down as well, haven't they? With a couple of the more minor betting exchanges, I'm not even sure they're in place at the moment.
If they think bookmakers going to take up the slack here and reporting to the IHRB that we've got suspicious betting patterns here, and give them named information. I mean, it's the stuff of nonsense. I remember when Betfair first signed their memorandum of understanding with the BHA. About 2 or 3 years later, I think all other bookmakers kind of like nominally followed suit. I remember asking someone from the BHA at the time. They had 44 reports in that kind of like maybe a 2-3 year period. 44 bookmakers reported into them. I asked them how many of those bookmakers were not Betfair, and the answer came back none. So bookmakers may nominally, fixed odds bookmakers, etc. They may normally, think they report into kind of like the regulatory bodies about suspicious betting patterns, but the reality is, unless they're approached, I imagine they are not going to be voluntary.
It's open to interpretation. We have to provide, I believe, if you see something that's like absolutely fucking like cut and dry, you would send that on. But a lot of these things are open to interpretation, and you're kind of looking for a more pattern outside one individual bookmaker, and you're kind of using this stuff to paint a picture and get a more informed, holistic view of things.
Also, they can't process it if you give them apps. If every bookmaker gave them absolutely everything that looked like it might be outside of a range of betting, they wouldn't be able to process it. They don't want that. They exactly.
You can't even declare non-runners fucking that don't start races. Like, are we joking here?
I tell you what would be very interesting to know who is tendering for this work, because there aren't that many organizations that would have the expertise to do it. There are quite a lot of people who now call themselves integrity services analysts and this sort of thing, but a few of those have some quite interesting backgrounds.
Definitely do. I've seen some of the ones popping up in America, and you wouldn't employ them to feed a fish for a week, I'd say. Like, it's so
it'll be interesting if we do ever find out if someone is taking over, a third party is taking over, who it is that has usurped the BHA.
Presumably in the interim, while they do get someone to cover for it, if you have got any suspicious betting patterns at AK bets that you want to report, presumably you've got no one to report into at the moment.
You wouldn't know. Yeah, it's kind of like, I generally don't know. I've only been a bookmaker on course since middle of 2021 and online since the start of 2023. Nobody has ever come to me from anywhere and asked me about suspicious betting patterns on any event ever. I'd imagine there's no proactiveness in that regard as well. Like, it's more reactive to reports that don't exist, essentially.
Mad.
I think what they're looking, I think my experience of this is that you tend to get requests and this is the BHA, requests in writing to the bookmaker. And it's only when they are trying to support a ride or something that looks suspect, but haven't had integrity reporting information in respect to it. So I think it's quite rare that they actually go out asking for information. It's more they sort of expect it to arrive if it's very dodgy, as you say, or if they think that there is a dodgy ride or whatever, then they go looking for it.
And they're saying that there's a continuation of this. I'd imagine I'd be just drilling down very specifically with specific questions on this, and I'd be saying, is it of the same length and depth as when the agreement was in place? Are you still paying the same amounts as the agreement per day, 10 grand a day per day's race in an island? Are those amounts still being paid in the interim? There's loads of questions that weren't asked there. I'd imagine, if I had to guess, it might not be, if a relationship's coming to an end, you might not be as specific or as incentivized to even do the job. Anyway,
it looks a bit like they scaled back from it, doesn't it? Really, it looks a bit like they've decided that this is an area to save money on integrity. It may be wrong, perhaps, but reading that statement, you get the impression that they consider the integrity service, the integrity element of their service, to be too expensive at the moment. And
well,
that's not a fantastic look.
We've gone from 5 or so years ago, with Aidan O'Brien getting done for a non-trier at Dundalk, Music Box or whatever the horse was called, and all the big talking names about we're going to go after people with non-triers, and for a month they got about 6 non-triers, and some of the names involved, you were like, Jesus Christ, I can't believe they've done that. Then that stopped pretty quickly. And now we don't even have an integrity service a few years later.
Well, no, they have an integrity service, but they don't have. They just
don't have any information being fed into it. Yeah.
Well, it's hard to know, isn't it, from what they've said?
Yeah, and they've a reasonably big case coming up with Redwood Queen. That's due to come out, I guess, in the next month or so. It seems to be imminent. So we see what develops there. We'll stay in Ireland, lads, for the next story. There's an interesting story about Dennis Harney in the Racing Post. He was talking to Owen Byrne, his general manager at Tramore Racecourse, and he was kind of citing growing pressure on small racecourses via a reduction in media rights payments, and suggesting that a lot of small tracks like Tramore are kind of at break-even position at best. So this is kind of rising out of the Thurles news, where it was strongly suggested, and we mentioned as well on the pod, that the racecourse manual newly published by IHRB, which basically sets about kind of certain benchmarks for all tracks, and that this might have been a significant factor in decision for Thurles to close. And the IHRB came out this week and basically kind of regaling against this as such. They were saying that all the requirements set out in the manual aren't they don't have to be immediate, and inflexible was their kind of terming of that. Owen Byrne writing or talking to Dennis Harney in his piece said, I think when something is written down, it can become a requirement very quickly regarding demands to improve facilities. And let me say, everyone wants to improve facilities. It's all well having a basic standard, but some of those standards are very cumbersome and costly. A racecourse that has 12 fixtures is expected to have the same standards as a racecourse with 20. We have 12 media rights days to pay for that, not 20. So the math just doesn't add up. In the same piece, I have to say, or just to mention as well, Ursula Sinnott of Wexford and Patty Liudestole were more positive about this manual from the IHRB, kind of going along the line that it's not something that is imminent as such, but more kind of a roadmap, um, and kind of taking that general line from the IHRB. But AK, maybe bring you in here first. Do you kind of see where the smaller race courses concern is coming from here? And what do you make of it?
I think it's going to be very tough. Like I said with the Thurles chat last week, I think it's probably going to be very tough for some smaller race courses in the not too distant future to break even. Essentially, I think media, like talking media payments, media rights there. I think media rights are probably not far off as high as they can possibly go. I'd say without that tipping point occurring, if it's not already about to occur anyway. We said before about just tracks, the reliance on the media payments in this environment, and the way, unfortunately, the way you counteract that is making the product more appealing. And you might not like it, but probably being a little bit more smart about your campaign for your taxes on bookmakers who are paying for all that stuff, essentially. I personally, when I look at, I was actually only doing a bit of analysis on our on-course portfolio the other day, and I wouldn't be buying pitches of any value at some tracks, essentially, because like Thurles, you might be just left holding nothing at the end of it, essentially. I think, you know, my opinions, I think there's probably the tipping point's probably not too far away in various aspects of the sport. And I think piling cost onto bookmakers is the most dumb way about protecting the sport I can think of, to be honest with you. And not having a joined approach on that, I just think it's a bad idea, a really bad idea. But yeah.
And it really, the change in policy with the media rights payments, where they used to all just get a set payment. That changed last year when it's now more related to betting turnover and such. So it's coming home to roost, I guess, for a lot of tracks.
There's just a lot of bookmakers not incentivized to publicize that stuff, because I just don't think it's it's going to be a positive outcome. Let's see. I might be wrong. Hopefully I'm wrong.
Harry, I might bring you in on our next topic to lead us in. Did you catch this piece by Gordon Brown? This is Gordon Brown, the former Prime Minister, not the racing TV presenter up in Scotland. He's writing in The Guardian about taxing the gambling industry to fight against child poverty. What did you make of this as a whole? I have some stats here, but maybe you can come in first and your insight.
Yes, it's a piece by Gordon Brown, who was not only he was perhaps more influential as Chancellor under Tony Blair for a very long time, which is why I think he is particularly interested in this subject. It is that he's saying basically we can tax gambling more as they do in other jurisdictions. He says 35% in the Netherlands, 40% in Austria, 50% in Pennsylvania, 57% in Delaware, and we're between 15 and 21%. And his view is that you can raise 450 million for it. Now, we've done this to death, and I think he's using information provided by the Social Market Foundation Institute for Policy Research. And the thing that the angle from a horse racing point of view is that it's interesting how everyone on the sort of increased taxation side of the argument has suddenly become so protective of horse racing in the last 6 months. And again, it's mentioned in this article, which is that he says if you increased duty from 15 to 25%, that would generate 450 million after returning 100 million pounds to horse racing. Now, I wasn't aware that Gordon Brown was remotely interested in the protection of horse racing, and you just wonder, and frankly, to an extent, worry that horse racing is being used as a bit of a Trojan horse here to try and get rid of it as an opponent to increase betting duties. And I just think the sport needs to be, the sport rather than the industry. I'm not sure to what extent the BHA would back this. I've always advocated for a separation between sports betting and casino style betting, because I think the reason we're in this hole is because the public perception of gambling is now so badly tainted by casino style betting that it's very easy to hit it, and it's very easy to make arguments that it would deal with child poverty if you and you know, the photo accompanying the Guardian article is not horses or football, it's fruit machines, and that's the way that people now perceive gambling, whether we like it or not. And I think that has been a policy failure on the part of racing to an extent, but also bookmakers and government to an extent. But I just think that horse racing needs to be very careful about its new friends in the increased taxation lobby. And that's my only real insight on that, to be honest with you, Ronan.
AK, do you want to come in on this guy? Just we did notice.
I think AK is pro increased taxing on bookmakers, as I understand it. We don't need to go to him.
You did reply to a thread there from Dan Needless during the week. You mentioned just on the subject of taxation.
Yeah, I like Dan Needle, to be honest. I think he's very good. His conclusions, there's a couple of minor points I didn't agree with in his series of tweets, but I think his conclusion was correct, that taxation isn't the way to reduce problem gambling or child poverty for that matter. Gordon Brown, I'm slightly tied on because a very big early touch I got at Ladbrokes was when the boundary for Cowdy and Cowdenbeath changed, and Ladbrokes didn't factor it into their odds on his total number of votes around 2008, I think it was. So that was a very profitable day after time that. But also another funny Gordon Brown story is I was told by a family member that Gillian Duffy, that silly woman, or that racist, obnoxious woman, or whatever the exact quote was, is a distant relative of mine, which is is
that the lady that he got hot mic'd on?
Yeah, Gillian Duffy. Yeah. She was. I got a very funny
bigoted old woman. I think
bigoted old woman was the correct line. Yeah. I got a very funny photo of my dad, who was at like a distant relative's party, and saw her there, and got a photo with her, and it turns out like she's a second cousin of my mum or something like that. But there you go. This is obviously just brain dead, I think, and the people backing it from a racing perspective are again, it's probably going to hit them when it's too late, I think, by not understanding the subject. I don't disagree with what Harry says about splitting sports betting and casino and treating them as two separate things. Definitely got different win rates, definitely got different behaviours, probably got slightly higher problem gambling rates. Horse racing separating itself from sports betting is monumentally dumb. I think it'll have a negative impact, like I said, on various things like sponsorship, margins given back to players. I think there'll be more margin taken by bookmakers, absorbing more costs just all over. RTP rates on casino are only going to go down, and that's just like my conclusion was. I haven't seen anything in the last number of years that doesn't have. I'm assuming it's an unintended consequence still, because I'm being charitable, but doesn't have the unintended consequence of making the black market more more palatable to people, to more and more numbers of people. And I think regarding the black market, I think the first black market bookmaker that establishes a solid reputation for paying bets out would do very well, unfortunately.
That segues us nicely to our last topic, which your name's all over, AK. So this is reports in the Netherlands that the Dutch government is set for a gambling tax black hole of more than 200 million euro following the staggered tax increase brought into force in January. So according to reports, the KSA, which is the Netherlands Gambling Authority, will announce a steep fall in revenue during the year. So stricter regulations in the Netherlands, including advertising bans, deposit limits, and higher taxes have led to a significant shift of players from licensed to unlicensed gambling operators.
Just obvious,
The
isn't
legal,
it? Sorry.
this is the example basically that you should be used, I guess, for against this kind of argument, I suppose. And at least you have a kind of real life example of it happening there in front of us, what we've been talking about for ages.
The problem betting has and horse racing just in general is if you ask 100 members of the public, should we tax gambling companies more? Oh yeah, we should do that. Yeah, we're short on money. We should do that. Should you do all these things? Oh yeah, we're in favor of that. They're all very the nice sound bites. They're very. You have to be.
It's a very simple thing.
Yeah, you have to understand the subject. Like we had probably one of them. We were essentially the UK. Essentially, UK and Ireland was essentially pretty much the blueprint about how to have a pretty successful gambling industry, and then tackling some aspects of the harm related to that growth would have been a good idea. But like to the absolute detriment of the whole industry, it's just not anyway a market leader anymore. It's where the companies that have done well in that environment have migrated elsewhere. It's just not an important market to them anymore. Yeah, I don't know. I think it's fuck. I try not to be negative, but it's full.
Try harder.
Yeah. It's it was pretty good. It was good to be a gambler, to be interested. Like we have to consider 21 million people gamble, and as I say all the fucking time, 99.3% of them do it unbelievably safely, and we should be more focused on the 0.7% rather than hampering the 99.3%. You're kicking some amount of lads out of that legal market now, and where there's absolutely no protection and no gambling harm stuff, and they're just going about it totally the wrong way, from my point of view. Yeah, I think the long-term consequences will be pretty bad. We'll probably do. I think the long-term consequences will dwarf the excesses of the UK gambling industry in around 2010. I think the potential for very negative consequences for people who suffer harm will far surpass that, I think, and that is apparently what they're trying to avoid. So. Yeah, I think they're just doing it the wrong way. But then again, I suppose I shouldn't get too annoyed because you try and make money out of people making bad decisions in life, whether it be selling a property, doing anything that you're always trying to do. So I think I'll try and adapt to the situation as best I can. But yeah, I think they're going about it the wrong way.
Yeah. We'll start our questions section and come back to the Shergar Cup. Tony, you can take this one from Andy DeLodge. Panel's thoughts on Shergar Cup in light of Maureen Haggis's denigrating standard of jockeys. My opinion is something similar, having noticed at Doncaster the lack of legends for their race over the last couple of years. Are these type of formats getting more difficult to find correct caliber of contestants?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was the most underwhelming Shergar Cup that I can remember in terms of known jockeys. I wrote in my column on Saturday, I'd literally only heard of 5 of the 12. And I like to think I'm relatively well grounded in international wrestling. Wouldn't say I'm an expert at all, but I literally hadn't heard of 7 of them. And that may have been borne out by the crowd numbers that we mentioned earlier. Maureen Haggis came out and was clearly underwhelmed by some of the quality of the riders on show. And obviously, we should say it's basically potluck what trainers get some of these international jockeys. But yeah, I mean, the Doncaster Legends is, it's like they are beginning to scrape the bottom of the barrel there. Yeah, I mean, it's just I don't think we've got enough jockeys. Full stop. It's while I'm on the subject, this kind of like the field size and stuff like that. I just wonder whether this is going off on a tangent here. I just wonder whether they're going to have to ditch the rule that a jockey can only ride at one meeting per day. Because if you had a jockey that you wanted to ride your horse and he's riding elsewhere, you wouldn't. A lot of people might say, well, we're not going to run our horse then until that jockey's available. And if they can only ride at one meeting a day, especially at the height of the summer when we've got maybe 8 fixtures per day. I was just wondering about that as well, about the field.
I've often thought about that. I think if you're trying to sell the sport and get more people to go, not being able to get leading jockeys to more than one meeting when they've ample time to go and ability to get there does seem problematic. But the PGA are in a difficult position on that because a lot of the non-top jockeys, don't have the same luxuries and find themselves being forced to go from, Brighton to Ayr in the course of a day if they allow them to.
Have you ever heard of a jockey kind of like going after the state of trade argument and just say?
I was going to say the same. Isn't it not like is it not a restraint?
So a restraint of trade argument. Thanks for giving me time to prepare this one, guys. is as I recall, based on one of the factors is whether there's a reason for it. Good public policy, good policy reason for it. There's not just a blanket ban on restraint of trade. It's you can do it if there is a good reason, and that outweighs the restraint of trade. And I think what they would say is, well, yeah, it's the welfare of jockeys, who many of whom would support that argument. So I'm not unaware of anyone actually doing anything formal about it. I'm certainly aware of people having grumbled about it.
Yeah, it's quite interesting because jockeys can fly from the UK to Ireland to
yes,
ride,
but not back.
Yeah,
that happened to Ryan Moore.
Ryan Moore, yeah.
That's very interesting. I never even thought about that, but not back as well. I think the jockeys would win that one, but I know nothing.
We'll bring in David Bradshaw's question again on the Shergar Cup. Yay or nay on the Shergar Cup in general? He's asking from a punter or a bookie point of view. For what it's worth, it's a nay from me. I'll start this on a more positive note because I'm anticipating what's coming in general, but I'm not hugely interested in Shergar, but I definitely would be positive about it. I think it offers something different than the week-on-week stuff we have every week. It appeals to a different type of racing fan. His betting point of view, the races are 10. In theory, should be 10 runners. Maybe not this year, but that's a bigger problem. Should be good betting heats, and as we said before, it's different. The different riding styles, jockeys. That's offering something up to the punter. That's not the usual. There's a potential angle in there if you were so obliged to do your research, and potentially could lead to a bet of some sort. So I'd be pretty positive about the Shergar Cup. But who wants to tell me it's all a bunch of rubbish?
Someone else. I agree with you, Ronan. I agree. I think it's a good thing. I think that it exposes people to foreign jockeys. I think that's a positive thing. So I'll wait for AK to destroy it.
I agree with both. I agree with both sides of the fence. I think it's a crock of shit, but I also don't mind it because if you can get 18,000 people to watch a crock of shit, I think that's probably a positive, to be honest with you. So it's probably the same way I treat, slightly different but similar vein, is just student days and how they annoy people. I'd be treating it the same thing. I think getting 18,000 people who think it's enjoyable is probably a good thing, to be honest. Just don't watch it.
Unfortunately, I view everything through the prism of my own betting, and I wouldn't dream of having a serious bet on it.
No.
But I'm not the target audience, am I? So.
My nan watched it. She told me. She gave me a ring. She told me.
I've been to it. It was good fun. It's a good day.
So the fact they got 30,000 there is, I think that would put it up there as their that this is a couple of years ago now, mind you, but
Yeah.
that would put it up there basically alongside King George Day, I believe, outside of the royal meeting as the most popular meetings of their year.
When they
So it's
got
no,
33,000, it definitely was. Harry only
yeah.
went to get his face painted. Tiger. Did you get a tiger?
Yeah. I went to see all my favorite Azerbaijani jockeys.
We'll move on. Harry Diamond's asking, should Ushin get a ban for the ride on Thursday? So this was the ride on the Judemonte horse, I believe, Corinth. We lost it in the stewards' room. Harry Davis was riding the horse that was second initially, but promoted to first, Las Vegas. What did you see anything of this, Tony? Should he been banned for the ride?
I think the stewards deemed it accidental. I think that was a charitable assessment of it. No, I think he got lucky not getting a couple of days there. It did look very rough and ready, especially towards the end. But I think that was we mentioned Sheen's Group 1 win on Sunday. I think he got equally lucky by not getting a ban there. But the stewards obviously looked into it at some length. They chucked the horse out, but they deemed it accidental, which surprised me.
I think I told you it was
I
gonna be
thought
accidental,
I thought
didn't
so
I,
as
Tony?
well. Richard's asking, with no end in sight of short fields, do you think Tote should bin the play spot and move to a pick 4, pick 5, pick 6s at reasonable takeouts, bigger dividends and potential carryovers that'll attract new money? So, AK, here you go. You can help the Tote out here with a bit of advice. What do you reckon?
I think they should just bet more into the pools myself. I'm joking. I couldn't care less. I genuinely couldn't care less. I don't get why anybody would do any of that. I wouldn't do it myself, but listen, if people do it and enjoy it, good luck to them. But I just think it's a rubbish betting product myself,
In your opinion?
in my opinion, allegedly.
John Malcolm's kind of experience question here. So he went to Brighton on the 8th. Checked beforehand for disabled parking, as arrived in plenty of time, was told the car park was full, had to park on the street. All nearby streets only, sorry, all nearby streets were permit only, so had to return home. Could they not have a plan B in place? Tony, do you want to
Yeah, I know
grab
Brighton
that?
quite well. They normally have an overspill car park, but obviously that was probably full. It's the 3-day Brighton meeting last week is the most popular of the year. And I gather it was mobbed. I did come back to John subsequently, and he just suggested maybe a shuttle. On really busy days they could have a shuttle bus, park and ride type scenario. But around that racecourse area, it is, it's like you said, it's there's no kind of easy parking spots.
That hill going up to Brighton's an absolute nightmare as well, isn't it? I'm
Yeah,
fancy cycling up that.
yeah.
Yeah, doesn't sound great. Doesn't sound
Area as well.
ideal.
Great from a customer experience there. Sandoz, I think it was an old question that we didn't get to read out before. It was just saying, may have been covered before, but why is Sunday such an underused day for racing in this country, that being Britain? Is this still a hangover from the days where charging for Sunday sport was not permitted, or is there just not demand for it? What do you think, AK? Is there anything in that?
Jesus, I don't know, to be honest with you. I wouldn't be advocating for
You'd
more
think it would
racing.
be quite a having decent racing on a Sunday. It's a day
It
off for
would.
people that
Yeah, like it's probably different for me, bloody kids and stuff. Like I tend to drag them racing if it's a local track. Leopardstown, we've been to Leopardstown a few times and stuff like that, but I don't know how the masses would treat it. Yeah, anything. Uh, you're always trying to fill your time, I think, with stuff interesting to do at the weekends. I don't get why you wouldn't have more racing on the weekend days myself, to be honest with you, and less earlier in the week, I suppose.
Final question, Tony, I might come to you with this because this is one you found or came to you quite late in the day from Lawrence. Morning, is there any information available on horses wearing blindfolds in stalls, as this seems to be a regular problem these days with jockeys not taking them off in time? Man of La Mancha, a short price favourite at Brighton on Wednesday, Rosario twice recently. I personally would not back a horse if I knew they were due to be blindfolded in the stalls. Do you think there's a case there, Tony?
Yeah, definitely. The Rosario mentioned, I think that was at the Shergar Cup. That was an American jockey, just didn't get the hood off in any like a timely fashion. Like I said, there's been a few examples recently. I think I gather it's relatively easy to just like whip it off coming out the stalls. Or
Well, two things. One, do you remember? I think Frankie Dettori did it on Lord North. Remember, it went about sort of half a furlong with the blindfold still flying. It's also an integrity one because it's quite an easy way to stop a horse. Is not to not quite time the blindfold, and I think it was one of the findings made against Danny Brock was that he didn't remove the blindfold properly, and he did that intentionally.
I did ask because I don't know. I mean, it would be good to know if your horse is going to be blindfolded in the stalls, because obviously a lot of them wear hoods on the way to the start and then they get taken off there. But I mean, I think there might be an idea if that was kind of like flagged up on the BHA site or something. I did ask X because that question came to me late on by direct message. I don't know personally if it is flagged up already, but I asked Twitter and I got very little response. So presumably it isn't known. But if it isn't known, there's an argument to suggest.
I've never seen it anywhere. Have you? Like, it's definitely not it seems quite an important factor that just to be able to make up at the last minute yourself, and it's that integrity angle.
Enough things can go wrong in racing if there's another extra element to that, then it's probably not ideal, is it?
That'll do it for this week, lads. Before we go, as I said, I read out the usual. If you're having a bet this week, do check out the AK Bets Big Prices tab. Of course, we got the Premier League rolling back into action this weekend. So only one place to go if you're looking for your ACA on Saturday.
Black market.
William Hill / the Tote.
William Hill first.
Yeah, Pontefract, yeah. The Tote booth at Pontefract.
Yeah. So that'll do it. We'll leave it there. Thanks for all your contributions. Thanks for everyone for watching and listening, and we'll be back around the same time next week. Cheers.